So now I would like to welcome my colleague Derek. So thank you for joining us, Derek. So Derek is an expert consultant that is working with us at IHE, and he will be introducing the IHE methodology and the specific case where we applied it in the last few months for the UNICOM project. So thank you, Derek, and the floor is yours.
Thank you for that kind introduction, and I'll just ask for a quick confirmation that, in fact, I'm now showing the title slide for my presentation. Is that what everybody sees?
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, as Sophia said, I'm going to be talking about the IHE methodology, and we're leveraging this methodology for the UNICOM test lab, which is one of the things that IHE-Europe contributes to in the UNICOM project. As our agenda for this webinar, I'm going to do a very quick introduction. I'll talk about IHE's role in the overall digital health standards development organization community. I'll answer the question, what is the methodology? And I hope try to explain why it is helpful. And I'll talk about how we're making UNICOM more boring by leveraging this methodology, and then Q&A after that. I'll begin, I'm sorry, with the compulsory apologies. I'm a Canadian. It's just part of how we roll, I'm sad to say. The first is I've got a bit of a cold, so I will do my best to make sure that I mute so that none of our teammates who are wearing headphones lose an eardrum in case I sneeze. Um, I also am going to apologize ahead of time if anybody's heard any of the jokes that I'll be using during my presentation. It's always a risk for any comedian that they'll have people who've been in the audience for prior presentations. The last of my compulsory apologies is that I know for members of the UNICOM team, it's become tiresome that I always do so much apologizing. It's, as I said, a bit of a national failing, and so I'm sorry for that. As by way of a brief introduction, this is me. This is a picture from probably 15 or 16 years ago. I hope I look at least a little bit still like that picture. The real takeaway is on the right-hand side. Um, I've done work in Canada as a Canadian on a number of our digital health initiatives, but most of the work that I've done the last dozen years or so has been in low and middle income countries in sub-Saharan Africa and in the Asia Pacific region and in the Middle East. For people who are at the top of the right-hand side, the donors that support these projects in low and middle income countries. And at the bottom of the screen, you see I've got a bit of a geeky side. I'm a recovering engineer. I'm in a 12-step program and coming along well. But I have been for quite a few years now a delegate of Canada to ISO TC215, a longtime HL7 member, a Fire Foundation founder, and I was until earlier this year Canada's delegate to the IHE International Board. I've been in the past a co-chair of some of the IHE technical committees and have been a primary author on a number of IHE specifications. So I can speak in the first person about all of the ways that we eat our own cooking and leverage our methodology. Okay, I'll get right into this. What role does IHE play in the digital health standards development organization ecosystem? If you think of base standards on the left that are developed by ISO or by HL7 or by SNOMED or others. And on the far right-hand side, what we want for ourselves, which are system-wide interoperability in our care delivery networks, the role that IHE plays between this one extreme and the other extreme is that we sit in the middle and we take all the fun out of it. We do this by developing interoperability specifications and by doing the governance work of supporting conformance testing for solutions that purport to adhere to those specifications. We develop the specifications in our domain committees. They are committees made up of users and health informatician specialists, vendors, sometimes academics, and these domain committees are focused on areas of particular practice in healthcare, radiology, or pharmacy, or reusable digital health infrastructure, IT infrastructure. The role of these domain committees, there's no way to sugarcoat it, is to create boring engineering artifacts, crushingly boring engineering artifacts. Where there is optionality in these underlying standards, we evaporate away that optionality. We come up with something that is so boring that on the right-hand side of the screen, it can be conformance tested. And this work is done by IHE's deployment committees. Deployment committees, as I said, I was a delegate of Canada to the IHE International Board. The deployment committees are where we nationalize artifacts that are going to be deployed across our care ecosystems. It's where we do the conformance testing, and Canada has a projectathon each year for the last few years, and there's a projectathon that was just held in Rennes for France, as well as hosting the connectathons. There's a European connectathon, a North American connectathon, an Asia Pacific connectathon, and this is where we do the conformance testing, and this is how we exert governance on our care delivery networks. This is how digital health solutions that purport to follow the specifications, the crushingly boring engineering artifacts that we develop in our domain committees, this is how they show that they in fact meet these criteria, that they can pass the tests. Well, what's the value proposition behind turning everything so boring and taking all of the fun out of it? The value proposition for IHE is that scale is our innovation. We're a little bit unapologetic for being so boring because that's how you can have digital health solutions be plug and play compatible with each other across an entire care delivery network. In fact, maybe we should consider changing our marketing tagline. IHE, taking all the fun out of digital health for over 20 years. How is it that our methodology accomplishes all of this boredom? There's three main pillars to the IHE methodology. There's the profiles, the implementable actor transaction specifications. There's reference models where technical frameworks are defined in the Gazelle tool. And then there's conformance assessment where we have our testing events. Looking at the first of these, IHE profiles follow a prescriptive format and governance process. They span 4 volumes, and in volume 1, the business requirements are clearly and simply described. We develop use cases that we describe in terms of actors and their interactions. And if these use cases can map to existing IHE actors, then these actors are identified. In volume 2, we define how the transactions work. These are unambiguous engineering descriptions that support interoperability. And as is true for all IHE artifacts, this is a conformance testable artifact. In volume 3, we will describe the content data models. So here's where we will start to map to one of the underlying standards. For example, the HL7 V3 CDA specification, or very commonly now, the FHIR specification. And as is true for all of the artifacts, this description of the content model will be conformance testable. I want to note something. All IHE profiles are a portfolio of underlying specifications. So in the content model, there would also be called out, at least in the base specification, what are the normative code systems as well, SNOMED or ICD or LOINC or what have you. It is possible to have a content only profile. And I've spent a lot of work with the Quality Research and Public Health Technical Committee and with the Patient Care Coordination or PCC Technical Committee. And both of those have quite a few of their artifacts that are content only profiles. And they can be grouped with an underlying transport protocol. A good example of that is that radiological information can be conveyed on a disk, it can be conveyed over the wire, and so you can take a content profile and match it up later to the transport. So it's possible to have a content only profile, and in these, there will be no volume 2. All right, all IHE profiles are global artifacts. And this is important. We are an organization that is international, and we have an expectation that our profiles can be taken up by people all over the world. I particularly point this out because of the amount of work I've done under the auspices of WHO or the World Bank or the Gates Foundation or others in low and middle income countries. So when we're authoring our IHE profiles, we have an expectation that they are a global public good. They are available for free from our website. And I think that many of us would be surprised at just how many of our artifacts have been taken up. For example, in low and middle income countries, where IHE profiles underpin an initiative I've been involved with for over 10 years now, the Open HIE initiative. It is the health enterprise architecture of over 60 countries in LMICs, low and middle income countries, and it is entirely defined leveraging IHE profiles. So in chapter 4, in volume 4 of an IHE profile is where you can specialize, where you can nationalize our profiles. Regional constraints can be defined in volume 4, national constraints can be defined in volume 4, and it is the National Deployment Committee that will govern the content that is nationalizing a particular IHE profile in volume 4. Here's something important. This governance aspect helps a profile that has been nationalized for use within a country to keep up with changes that might happen in the profile itself. One of the reasons why this is part of the technical committee's work is that this is how you make sure that the specializations that are in volume 4 don't break anything that's in volumes 1, 2, and 3. Okay, pillar number 2, that was pillar number 1. Pillar number 2 is where we can develop reference models, and we construct reference models from the IHE profiles. And these models can be thought of as assemblies of Lego blocks. You can think of all of these profiles as Lego blocks that you can use to construct a new toy every day. If anybody else is old enough, like I am, to remember those commercials on TV from years ago. So you can collect these profiles together as an assembly of Lego blocks, and they fit together because of the boringly engineered dimple patterns. We know that different Lego blocks fit together because they were designed that way, and because we took all the fun out of it in step 1. The reference models can be described in the IHE Gazelle tool, and software solutions that operationalized one or more of these building blocks can attend engineering events. And we can leverage these engineering events to iterate the reference models. And in this way, we're able to leverage Gazelle as an instrument of innovation. All IHE profiles will start life as a trial implementation. And during that period, during the first few years of their uptake, the attendance at these Gazelle events will give us an iterative feedback loop that we can leverage in the technical committees to ensure that any edits that need to be made to these profiles can be reflected, and that the updated versions can then be subsequently tested at the next Connectathon event. At pillar number 3, we are leveraging those profiles that have gone to final text. These are now ready to be for conformity assessment, for conformance testing. And at this point, we're now leveraging Gazelle as an instrument of governance. Products that pass the tests fit into the framework. If a product is non-conformant, we can identify what are the tests that it isn't passing, and the development teams for these products can fix what the issues are so that they are conformant and that they do fit. The process ensures that conformant products will plug and play. And when I say that Gazelle is leveraged as an instrument of governance, it's governance on behalf of the people who are in charge of operating our care delivery networks, are in charge of leveraging digital health to provide high quality, patient safe care in all of our care delivery networks. So as summary points, IHE's role is to take all the fun out of things. We take things that are sometimes really too exciting to go to scale, and we make them boring enough that they can be deployed across the length and breadth of our national care delivery networks. The IHE methodology does this by developing IHE profiles. These profiles are like Lego blocks, and you can assemble these Lego blocks to make a reference model that supports a particular care delivery use case. We can use Gazelle as both an instrument of innovation to iterate the reference model at engineering events, but also as an instrument of governance when it comes time to do conformance testing and ensure that all the digital health solutions that purport to be correctly operationalizing a profile are in fact doing so. Okay, I stormed through that as quickly as I could so that we could get to a particular use case that, as Sophia mentioned, I've been on the team with IHE in helping with the UNICOM test lab, and we're doing our best to make UNICOM more boring. And how are we doing that? Firstly, UNICOM is a European initiative. Its role is to adopt the IDMP standards, the Identification of Medicinal Product Family of Standards that was published by ISO. UNICOM is a big and complicated project. There are a lot of stakeholders. They're doing a lot of different things, and it isn't boring. It's terrifyingly exciting sometimes. It needs to become more boring. Our role in UNICOM, IHE's role, is focused on the test lab. All of the workflows need to be tested, but there are many practical things, as we found, that need to be figured out before we can begin testing. There are multiple different data exchange pipelines at play here. So pharmaceutical companies need to make regulatory submissions to regulators. Regulators, in turn, need to be able to publish content to national MPDs, medicinal product dictionaries, and then onward into the rest of the care delivery network, because the digital health solutions need to know which drugs are authorized for use in each jurisdiction. Prescribers and dispensers need to be able to leverage these IDMP adherent data sets to support safe workflows for prescribing, for dispensing, including across international borders. Here in Europe, there is an expectation that a prescription that might be issued to me here in France could be in fact filled if I went across the border into Germany. So one of the things that we tried to do was string together all of these multiple pipelines. And that's actually on the screen. Look down at the bottom. We included the actors across all of the UNICOM stakeholders. Now, these actors are from industry. It includes the European Medicines Agency. They are national competent authorities that regulate the medicines in each of the jurisdictions. Again, as I mentioned, there's the medicinal product dictionaries in each country. There's national digital health agencies that support the national contact points for e-health. That's how information is exchanged between European states. And of course, these agencies also operate the national EHR infrastructure. And then there's the care providers and a very important group, the patients. So in our pipeline, we included both the systems and the humans. It made for a busier diagram, but one of the things that it did is surfaced who are our collaborators in our Unicom test lab. And these groups of humans are the ones that we need to be working with as we figure out our system to system interoperability challenges. I've highlighted the patients as an especially important group of humans. Absolutely all of the things that we are trying to accomplish in Unicom are in one way or another serving improved care for patients. So we refer to this whole metaphor as our Unicom data pipeline. And there's an aha moment that we have helped our Unicom stakeholders have, and that it's that their systems are all interconnected with each other. Each of these digital health solutions and each of the roles that they play, they have an upstream data provider and a downstream data consumer. And together, all of these different workflows, all of the systems that participate in these different workflows form a pipeline. And that pipeline from end to end supports the UNICOM's use case workflows. So this metaphor has given us a way to see how the stakeholder workflows connect together, to see how we make Unicom go. So when we are receiving medicinal product data, that's a particular workflow. We'll develop an set of actor transaction pairs for that. And that's how we receive inputs into regulators. That's how pharma companies make their submissions to EMA or to an NCA directly. That's how content from EMA makes its way to the NCAs. We've received medicinal data, now we have to share MPD content, and that's an output from the regulator. They feed from the NCAs to the MPD operators or from the NCAs to the national contact points for eHealth, and content has to be shared from the MPDs down to the care delivery software solutions that are supporting prescribing, dispensing, and all of the other elements of care delivery associated with this. We have to manage medicinal product data. And one of the things that has surfaced as being astoundingly important is how do we map from the regulatory data model that IDMP was originally designed to support to the care delivery data model, where we expect to leverage better, well-coded data to improve medication management. There's a rather inconvenient truth that the most significant proportion of medical errors are in fact medication errors in all of our care delivery networks. So this mapping from the regulatory data model to the care delivery data model, it's a very important thing for us to get right. We also have NCAs that have got tens of thousands of existing records. And how will we start to do the legacy data transformations to take this content and ensure that it is adherent to the IDMP family of standards? And how do we tell that we've got that right? What will be our quality assurance? What will be our quality control? How will we establish that this particular transformation of legacy data is correctly done? Uh, this mapping of the regulatory to the clinical models, this is uh, this is being done and in collaboration with some HL7 projects that IHE teammates are helping lead. These model maps uh, are proving to be a challenge. There's something that's referred to in a number of our Unicom deliverables now called the pivot. And the pivot is where this information that's at 1 degree of precision and specificity gets mapped to content that is sometimes at a very different degree of specificity. Um, in a number of our European member states, it is required that when a prescription is created, that it is generically created. It's what we call INN prescribing. It leverages the International Non-Proprietary Naming Convention. This is because you have to say, for example, that Derek should take paracetamol, but it's not at all important which brand of paracetamol that I'm taking. Only what is the dose, for how long am I to take it, and what is the active ingredient, paracetamol. So this mapping of the regulatory data models to the care delivery data models is proving to be a very challenging, very exciting thing that's not easy to make boring. Again, following down the pipeline, we prescribe a medicinal product, and then we have to be able to retrieve, for example, an e-prescription across borders. And here's where we get in country A and B. Country B, where a patient has gone to, is trying to have filled a prescription from their home country, from country A. And here's where country B's provider asks for information from the national contact point for eHealth in country B, and the NCP receives that and then themselves becomes the asker of that information from country A. When it's being provided by country A, there's some important transformations that have to be done on that e-prescription. This is where the role of the standards really becomes uh, so essential. We have to be able to unambiguously say, what is this medicinal ingredient? We actually take the description however it's reflected in the original e-prescription, and we translate it into English. We return it now to country B. They translate it from English into whatever is the national language in country B, and also do some mapping where that's necessary to the codes that are used for e-prescriptions in country B. This shared understanding, this unambiguous agreement around what it is that's in the prescription. Again, as you can well imagine, this is much more exciting now than it's going to have to be by the time we're done with it. We have to make this so boring we know it's going to be patient safe at all times. And it's not easy work, but it's important work. Then when the prescription is dispensed, we have to share the information from country B back to country A about that dispensation. And here the process goes in reverse. Now it's the country B content that's being pushed back to country A. The transformations go through, it goes through transformations as it did on its way over, and eventually it will find its way into the electronic health records infrastructure of country A and associated with that identified patient, that identified subject of care. Our IHE supported UNICOM test lab is providing important axes of value in this whole process. First, we're supporting innovation, and there are cases where questions need to be figured out that we don't know what the answer is yet, and we're helping with the innovation side of things. Also, our role is that we have to help with implementability. When we have developed whatever solution we have developed, it's going to have to be something that we can take to scale. And so when we take to scale, we have to ensure that these are implementable, conformance testable specifications, because of course our last axis of contribution in the test lab is as an instrument of governance. So at each step along the way, we are leveraging the IHE methodology to take the fun out of it. Our work has involved a lot of convening and a lot of coordinating. We've leveraged an IHE-based document format to help test lab partners develop well-formed use case descriptions. And we've developed a checklist that we can assist them in following formalisms, because these boring best practices, these formalisms, will allow each stakeholder to readily see how their particular use case fits into the overall Unicom data pipeline, how they will receive information from upstream suppliers of data to them, and how they will be a good supplier of data downstream to whoever is consuming their content. And we've leveraged the first pillar and the volume one aspects to a great extent with this convening and coordinating work that we've been doing. We've also had to do a lot of practical prototyping and experimenting. IHE teammates have developed example specifications. We've tried stuff out and developed in some cases prototypical servers. There's a fire server that is IDMP conformant and test data that's been created and populated in this fire server so that we could support teams that are exploring interoperability use cases in a lab environment. We're leveraging these assets as instruments of innovation. Um, and the lessons learned so far have been absolutely invaluable. There have been a number of situations where we've had to provide feedback to the SDOs, to HL7, to ISO, that some of the underlying standards, in fact, need to be evolved. Our role is very practical. And to be blunt, absolutely everybody's PowerPoint looks great and works perfectly. One of the truths is that in theory, theory and practice are the same. And in practice, theory and practice are not the same. And our role has been a very practical one, to take these specifications, embrace them, try them out, drive them around the block, and see that the wheels stay on. We do have some aspects of the Unicom workflows and use cases that are quite mature. There are some cases where they leverage normative EU specs that are already based on very mature IHE profiles. And where that's the case, the eHealth digital service infrastructure, the EDSI Lego blocks can be tested. And when we need to do that testing, we have the tools to do that testing. Our goal at all times is to make UNICOM more boring. And maybe we should have another candidate for our IHE logo. IHE, we could take the fun out of a bouncy castle. That's all the presentation that I have. I tried to go quickly enough that we'll have time for Q&A. In my experience, the question that has occurred to you while I've been blah blah blahing is going to make for the most interesting part of today's presentation. So I look forward to your questions, please.
If you raise your hand, I can unmute you. Unfortunately, I cannot unmute all of you at the same time.
First of all, thank you very much, Derek, for the presentation. And yes, if you have any question, please go ahead.
If I've gone too quickly, I will issue another abject Canadian apology. I appreciate now that I might have been just going like Deputy Dog, and it's been like trying to drink from a fire hose. So please, if I've done that, I'm sorry, and ask me a clarifying question to say, yeah, Derek, that was just too much, too fast, and can we go back to something? And I'd be happy to do that if that's the case.
I have a question for you, Derek. But let's give the word first to, it was Ronald. I will unmute you, Ronald. Bear with me.
You should be able to speak, to unmute yourself, Ronald.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, we hear you.
Yes.
Good. So thank you for the overview. And I must say, I'm Ronald Cornet, Amsterdam University Medical Centers in the Medical Informatics Department, focusing on the research, but fortunately frequently dragged into practice. And IHE has been like in the corner of my site, and not in the center. Now, as a use case, well, an example is in the Netherlands, we're discussing on how to improve our lab communication, especially well, exchange of information and the use of LOINC in that, for example. It now occurred to me, being in this presentation, okay, there could be a role for IHE there. So, and of course, you're with IHE, so I think you will agree with me on that. But can you elaborate a bit what it would look like if we say, okay, in the Netherlands, we want to move towards, let's say, using LOINC and improve our lab communication, both requests and results. And prepare for everything happening in Europe, such as European health data space regulations, which I think will also require the same.
Yeah, I think that to be honest, I would call out the use of the methodology. The first thing to do is to define the use case, and you've given a bit of a description, but there's some special challenges specific to labs. One of the truths is that when I would go, for example, to give samples, those samples can be split up, and you know, I'll give 4 vials of blood, and 2 will go to one lab, and 1 will go to a second lab, and another one will go to a third lab. And yet when the results come back, they have to be collated and as a particular set of results, a family of results for me. So there's this many-to-one relationship sometimes between the act of the sample taking and then when the analyses are done by the different labs. So labs present some particularly challenging problems. One of the things that's useful about an IHE approach is we just decompose those into particular actor transaction pairs where actors can be grouped with each other or actors can be associated with each other or identified as being on a team. That's all very doable. But the first thing I would suggest, Ronald, is this decomposition to say, okay, what are the workflow steps? How will I, as unambiguously and boringly as possible, describe that so that it's a well understood and testable thing? And then compose what can be sometimes a little bit complicated out of its simpler atomic pieces. That's exactly the kind of approach that was taken when we were modeling labs in Canada, and I had a little bit of involvement in that because I was a member of the infrastructure and architecture committee in governance committee for Canada Health Infoway. 2007, I think, was when I was the vice chair there. But the way to go about it: construct your Lego blocks and then know that the Lego blocks can be well assembled. I think that there's something that can't be escaped. The something that can't be escaped is that interoperability is a governance problem pretending to be a technical problem. It won't be the hardest part to describe what the Lego blocks are or to describe how they connect together into an assembly. The hardest part will be that everybody has to follow the rules pretty precisely in order for these workflows to be patient safe and efficient. I don't know if that's been your experience as well, but um, in my experience, the technical work is very doable.
Yeah,
The
no,
real challenges seem to be on the governance side.
I couldn't agree more. I think, and I don't know if it's a Dutch specialty, but we love to break the rules. And well,
It's
with
not.
that, I think many people love to break interoperability in whichever way they can because they think it's needed. And I think indeed that, well, establishing the governance so that the breaking is minimized and the risk of breaking is minimized is key, and that's, well, definitely one of the areas I think we're struggling, and not just in this area, but I think also with building up things like fire profiles, where there may be lack of conformance, compliance, consistency across profiles. And yeah, anything that can help to contribute to reducing that inconsistency would be very welcomed.
Ronald, you're not alone, so I can tell you that, and I don't know if it gives you comfort or if it just means that misery loves company, but you're not alone. I can tell you that my experience in low and middle income countries has shown me that sometimes we make things more difficult for ourselves. Sometimes we can be our own enemies in that regard. And I say that because in many low resource environments, there's just not there's just not enough opportunity to go your own way because they don't have the funding to go their own way. Everybody that wants to go their own way has to be able to sustain this idiosyncrasy. And in low resource environments, it's sometimes easier
Yeah,
to exert governance because there's just not enough money to do it otherwise.
yeah,
I
no,
see that. Oh,
very
go ahead,
true.
please.
Thanks. No,
I,
I just want to confirm. Indeed, I know, and I'm comforted by the thought I'm not alone. And I do feel that actually we can learn a lot from approaches in low and middle income countries, and I hope they can learn from us what they should not do, to prevent them from getting into the maintenance mess that we've created for ourselves. So
Sometimes my experience in Canada and my experience in other OECD countries is a cautionary tale that I bring to
yeah,
the MOHs, the ministries of health that I'm advising in
yeah,
low and middle income countries. I can tell you as well, it's a double-edged sword in this challenge of the fact that we fund idiosyncrasies. We can leverage how we fund as an instrument of governance to come to greater adherence. The truth is that IHE's two value propositions, one on the technical side, the interoperable specifications, and by the way, we don't write standards. We just develop implementable specifications based on underlying standards. So if your
Yeah.
standard is CDA or your standard is fire, you use the IHE methodology either way. But the other side of it, the fact that you can do conformance testing, that's an instrument of governance not in IHE's hands. That would be an instrument of governance in the Dutch Ministry of Health or in the hands of NICTIS, whoever it is that's got the mandate to to demonstrate adherence. And if you connect funding to that, if you connect provider payment to adherence, everybody pays attention to their paychecks. It is the most valuable and significant lever in the hands of every one of our ministries of health, and everybody who has a mandate to operate a care delivery network. I've got a friend, TG, who's had his hand up for a while, and I'm very sorry, my friend, that I've made you wait. Please, what's your question? And thank you, Ronald, for yours. It was terrific.
Thank you.
Your mic is enabled, so you can speak up.
You just have to take yourself off mute.
If you unmute yourself.
Do you hear me now?
Perfect, yes.
Okay. Ronald, yeah, we know each other. I just wanted to tell that we in the Netherlands made earlier a guideline for transmural lab. And we are now thinking about to make a new version. So join the working group. I think AG Kwale is also in the call. She's the chair of the working group processes. So let's have contact about that, Ronald, for getting contacted for follow-up.
Yeah, thanks.
Are there other questions? And Ronald has set the bar a little bit high with his first one being so very good, but please, if there are others.
Yeah, I have a question, Derek. I'm a vendor co-chair, IHE Belgium. So in Belgium, it's all about fire. Our national e-health roadmap pointed out to fire and the international terminologies like SNOMED and LOINC. But how can this methodology or could we apply this methodology to what we call our fire national e-health projects?
Could you? Yes. And should you? Yes. I can tell you that the health enterprise architecture that I leverage most often, the open HIE architecture that I leverage most often in low and middle income countries, is entirely based on fire. I haven't had a single client in an LMIC in the last 5 or 6 years that didn't want to go to fire. 100% of them want to go forward with fire. They all want to leapfrog. They don't want to be implementing HL7 V2. They don't want to do CDA. They all want to go to fire. But the key thing about the fire standard is that, as is true for any standard, there is quite a bit of flexibility. The role of IHE is to leverage that standard. And in the IHE profiles that are based on fire, and there's about 4 dozen of them now, maybe more, the fun has been taken out of it. I'm sorry to be hammering on this. I'm like a dog with a sock on that metaphor. But by the time we take the fun out of it, you know that solutions that are based on fire and based on the conformance testable IHE profile of those fire resources will be plug and play with others that are also conformance testable. And that's just not true for two solutions that are both based on fire. Fire itself is a very flexible specification. Fire extensions are so common that the United States ONC, the Office of the National Coordinator, they issued a blog post where they referred to profiliferation. And that's that, I'm sorry that the term has been overused, but an IHE profile is a conformance testable specification. A fire profile is usually just an extension or a customization on fire. And the ONC has found there's been such a proliferation of these fire profiles, they call it profiliferation. And it has completely undermined interoperability. So the flexibility of the standard is really terrific when solution 1 wants to connect to solution 2. You can probably do it in an afternoon, and that's wonderful. But that's integration. And integration and interoperability are not the same thing. If one system needs to integrate with another system and you each do your customizations and you get it working using Fire in an afternoon, I think that's great, but that's not the game. The game isn't that system 1 connects to system 2, it's that system 1 and system 2 connect to everybody. And every time we pretend that integration and interoperability are the same, we're making the mistake that interoperability is a governance problem pretending to be a technical problem. And the act of coming up with a consensus specification. So Belgium's pathway would be to say, here's an IHE profile of the patient spec. I have to have a client registry, a national client registry with my patient database, my demographic database for every, contains information about every Belgian. How am I going to express that? You want to go to the IHE PMIR specification, and you want to make nationalizations to it in volume 4. And when you have done that, every solution that is conformance testable already against PMIR will work, possibly after they've adopted your nationalizations. But now you've got a conformance testable specification so that things are plug and play with each other. The game isn't for solution 1 to connect to solution 2. It's for both solution 1 and solution 2 to connect to everybody. That's interoperability. It's not easy. And to make it work, you need some boring specifications, much less boring than the HL7 Fire standard provides you with. And other than that, I have no opinion on the matter.
Thank you, Derek, because in Belgium, our vendors are fed up with the integrations. Everywhere they want to put a solution in place, they consume their time on the integration, and it's money that the client, the hospital, he pays for the efforts of the integration, right?
But it's the maintenance that'll kill you. It's the maintenance on those integrations is what will kill you. There's an old Chinese saying, you can die from 1,000 small cuts. And every one of these little customizations over time is, the maintenance of it is backbreaking.
Yeah, and not even the maintenance. It's the integration itself that it's taking up a lot of resources as well. Eh?
Well, but usually there's at least a little bit of money at the front end to do the integration. What is the challenge is, as a care delivery network, you accumulate a technical debt that will just it will lead to tears.
Yeah, the accumulation, right.
Wow, you guys are asking the best questions. Seriously, who wants to go next?
Our time is limited because we do want to limit it to 1 hour. I know that all of your time is very limited as well. We are on a busy schedule. So while you might think about one final question, we will launch another poll.
Well, while you're doing that, I just want to say, if there isn't time for one more question, I want to thank everybody for politely listening to my blah, blah, blah. Again, I'm sorry I went through it as quickly as I did, but I want to thank you from the bottom of my little Canadian heart for asking such excellent questions and teasing out really useful aspects of why this is important and how it could add value.
And before you log out, there will be a final poll on your satisfaction rate.
one more question, and it looks like a dear friend of mine who I would love to hear the question from Manif.
You
Are
would
you
be
in?
should be able to speak, but it disappeared again. The raised hand disappeared.
Manif, are you unmuted?
I think now unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks, Derek. That's a great session as usual. Just to make it short, I'm just wondering, we have IHE, great profiles, and a lot of work at the Connectathon, many talented, uh, but still we see on the floor organizations skip around, try to find a workaround. They're not straightforward to the IHE profile. The profile is there for them, the VNA, the enterprise, especially in the imaging, where you can put the top three resistance to go through. Uh, if I have the VNA and can fix all my non-DICOM and DICOM and all profiles tested and mature enough, why we are not yet there in the industry, from your perspective?
Yeah. So from my perspective, and I have to admit to people that my perspective has changed a lot over the last dozen years. I mean, I've been in business for 42 years now, but over the last 12, I have been afforded a new point of view because of the work that I've done in low and middle income countries. And I really believe, Manif, that one of our challenges is that there is, on the part of the vendors, especially, and sometimes on the part of the customers, a soft addiction to innovation. And the idea that I need to have that shiny, cool new thing. And one of the inconvenient truths for us all is that shiny, cool new thing is probably kind of immature. And one of the other inconvenient truths is that to go to scale, that's the innovation for interoperability. That's the innovation that actually impacts on population health. But in terms of the financial motivations to have something that's cool and that differentiates you from the people you're competing against in the market, it's usually the magpie thing. You want the shiny object. You want to have your shiny object. You want to find magpies that want your shiny object. And that's a very natural tension. What we really need to be doing, as much as we're able to, is quickly maturing good new innovations. But I just uh, I just don't know if we'll ever cure ourselves of that soft addiction to the innovative, shiny, cool new thing. I have found that in the countries I work in, especially the low resource countries, they just can't afford to be a magpie. They have to have something that's going to work at scale. And in some ways, it's unfortunate they're in a low resource environment, but in some ways that point of view is one I wish was more easily adopted in our wealthier countries. And I'm sorry, I talked so long that maybe we're running short of time.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you. Well, lovely as usual. Thank you.
Good to hear your voice, my friend.
Thank you, Derek, and thank you, everyone, for the question. I guess Derek is also available by email. Sorry, I'm launching it, Derek. If you have any other question that arise in the next